Welcome back to Rarest Photos. We are getting on with reading some of these books. Obviously, I read a little bit of the From Here to the Great Unknown earlier that Lisa wrote posthumously from the grave with Riley. It was taken from her tape recordings. And then we have Child Bride. I started talking about this book, 2023, I think it was. I wasn't reading the actual physical book, but we've been talking about it for a while. And of course, it's funny. I just got done doing a couple videos for the Elvis and Legends channel. And the next chapter in this book is Anne Margaret and Mirror Images. Okay? A little background about this book. Suzanne Finstad wrote this because she felt like Priscilla, the story of Priscilla, hadn't really been properly written. That Priscilla didn't really share much, and she wanted to dig deeper about her past, all that other stuff. And she even got Priscilla to come and sit down. And that's the whole thing about the lie detector, the stress analyzer test between her and Cary Grant, not Cary Grant, that claimed that Priscilla had indeed been intimate before Elvis with him and others. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, for watching. I know there's a lot. I haven't done a lot of videos lately, but there's so many videos on this channel that you probably haven't watched. And I hope that in the downtime, where you haven't seen many videos come out, just click on Rarest Photos and you'll see all the different playlists. You can scroll back and maybe there's a topic that you want to hear about. There's videos of me reading. There's videos of me not reading. There's just topics. There's photo videos where I talk about photos and talk about periods of Elvis's life. So let's get started with chapter 22 right now. Anne Margaret and Mirror Images. Now, immediately following her graduation from an Immaculate Conception, Priscilla shared a golden interlude with Elvis. For 30 brief but glorious days, she enjoyed the undivided attention of her boyfriend without the distraction of a movie, an album, or his entourage. They spent much of their time in Elvis's blackened bedroom on the second floor of Graceland, sequestered for days at a time. Elvis loved the intimacy and the privacy of these long intervals, which Priscilla referred to as cocooning. Now, he kept the master bedroom suite frigid and draperies closed day and night, for he preferred the darkness. Opened the door only to receive meals. And I'm wondering, I know we just started reading, but the darkness part, I think it had to do with his eyes. We know he had glaucoma later in life, but he probably had issues even younger with his eyes. It makes sense to me. All right. So, inside the private sanctuary, Priscilla and Elvis played, listened to music, and had pillow fights. When they emerged for brief spells, Elvis organized shooting contests in the back pasture or go-kart races down the winding driveway from the street to the mansion, as if Graceland were his private amusement park. Priscilla, by all accounts, played as hard as Elvis, throwing herself into his childlike diversions. Well, this idyll ended on July 1st, 1963, when Elvis left for the West Coast to begin his next film, Viva Las Vegas! Priscilla was expected to remain at Graceland while Elvis was shooting a picture. That was another of the rules, ostensibly devised to prevent Elvis from becoming distracted, but in practice designed to give him a latitude to commingle with his stars. He was notorious for having flings with female members of the cast or crew of his movies, and had even confessed a number of them to Priscilla while they were secreted in his bedroom at Graceland. Well, in Viva Las Vegas, Elvis was cast opposite of singer-dancer Anne Margaret, who was, in the words of a friend of Elvis's, sex personified. Priscilla had a premonition that Elvis and Anne Margaret would have an affair, and she was skittish and unsettled about staying behind in Memphis. She occupied some of her time at the house of Willie Jane Nichols, who raised poodles and had sold Elvis the apricot toy that he gave Priscilla for Christmas. Gladys Presley had coaxed her best friend into the poodle business because it seemed glamorous, proclaimed Willie. Gladys dreamed of being a movie star when she was young. I didn't know that. Did y'all know that? That would explain some of the support that she showed for Elvis in the music business. She learned to dance to Charleston, and she read books about it. And she said, "We're going to get us a French poodle." Priscilla took her dog, Honey, to Willie to be groomed, and she got to coming over to the house because she loved the poodles. She loved little animals. In her loneliness, Priscilla regarded Willie Jane as a mother confessor of a sort, even sneaking cigarettes at her house. She had always invited me to everything, the midnight shows at the Memphian and all. In fact, Priscilla would always say, "I consider you family." Priscilla questioned Willie endlessly about Gladys Presley during their long afternoons together, picking her brain for clues that might help her understand what endeared his mother to Elvis so that she might appropriate them to herself. I told her what high morals Gladys had. Well, there you go. There's no way you're going to be like that, Priscilla, in my opinion. And she was eager to know, and she was sincere in it too. Of course she was. This is just typical Priscilla. You know, she wanted to know exactly what to say and be and do with Elvis prior to meeting him, so she could wrap him around her little finger. And now here she is, picking the brain of Gladys's best friend, so she can pretend. She can pretend to be like Gladys and make Elvis love her, or hold Elvis under her spell. When she was home alone, recalled Dee, Priscilla would go up into the attic at Graceland, where Elvis had preserved his mother's belongings, and try on Gladys's dresses, as if wearing her clothes, absorbing her smell, might somehow merge Priscilla's spirit with the mother that Elvis so adored. She was experiencing a variation of the Rebecca theme, living in a house built for another woman, surrounded by her taste and influence, trying vainly to win the affection of a man who was in love with a memory, except that in Priscilla's case it was Elvis's mother, not a former wife. The image of Priscilla in the attic at Graceland wearing Gladys's clothes was poignant, almost tragic, but at the same time very revealing. There was some intimidation, Joan Esposito said, speaking about Priscilla's adjustment to life at Graceland. But she has real inner strength, and she's very determined. And she knew that it was what it was going to take to stay there. She had the right intuition. She knew how to make him happy, and that was it. And I don't mean this in a negative way. She knew what her primary purpose was. And as long as she was focused on how much it meant to her, what she had to do with her family, what she had to do to get there, what she had to do to give up, she was going to stay in this. Priscilla's feminine intuition about Anne Margaret had, of course, been correct. Elvis and Ann, according to members of their retinues, had an immediate energy, electricity, that crackled on set and quickly developed into what was obviously a serious love affair. Priscilla had not been in Memphis for 4 months when she was put to her first and most acid test. Anne began showing up at football games. Elvis organized them with actor Robert Conrad and other Hollywood stars at Beverly Glen Park. Visitors and Memphis Mafia members attested to her spending nights at Elvis's rented house on Perugia, where he had returned after staying on Bellagio Road. He loved Anne, declared Patty Perry, who had a small part in Viva and was on the set throughout the shoot. And when Anne came, the party stopped again, and I was the only girl again. He had the best time with Anne Margaret that I've ever seen with any woman. They were like 2 kids. They partied. They had a good time. Now, like Elvis, the red-haired actress and dancer loved motorcycles, and the 2 of them took off on their bikes for long rides together in the canyons. Just Elvis and Anne. No entourage. This was an increasingly rare occurrence for Elvis, who liked the camaraderie of his salaried band of good old boys and felt more comfortable with them around. Now, even more unusual, he often picked Anne up himself rather than sending one of the guys. Patty considered them soulmates. Now, this is very much what Billy Stanley said. Billy Stanley believed that Elvis loved Anne Margaret, and that he was one of the 2 girls that he said, "I've loved 2 women in my life and don't even bother guessing." I mean, it's tough for me to completely get that except maybe Billy was young, right? And so maybe he wouldn't have remembered the Anne Margaret love affair, sort of a thing. We didn't have the internet back there in the 70s. So maybe Elvis said that based upon the memory. First off, I tend to think that one of the other loves was Lucy Barbin. I mean, reading the book there. But certainly could it have been Anne Margaret too? Sure. Two different women. But at the same time, kind of similar. Both dancers. Elvis had that thing. He liked dancers. So why wouldn't it be Lucy and Anne? That concept was endlessly absorbing to Elvis, who was convinced that everyone had a twin soul, that those two souls were one on the other side and then were separated and later reunited on Earth. One could tell if two people were soulmates, so the theory went, if they looked like each other. The idea of a twin soul had particular resonance for Elvis, who mourned his stillborn twin, Jesse Guerin, and may have clung to the concept of a soulmate as a means of making himself somehow spiritually whole. Let me set this down for a second. Joyce Bova, which we have yet to read this book. I remember seeing a picture, of Joyce and her twin sister, right? Twins. And I remember kind of thinking, hey, they kind of have a little resemblance to each other, right? In a sense. And so, as we continue to learn more about Elvis and remember more about Elvis that I'm sure that we've known before and we just forget because there's only so much new information our mind can hold before it kind of gets rid of the old stuff or puts it in, some little bank somewhere in your brain. To maybe remember later. Makes sense here. Did Anne and Elvis look like each other? No, they didn't. They both had, Elvis had lighter hair and it was dyed. Anne had, I don't think her hair was red, but she was the female Elvis. So I get maybe that concept. Anne Margaret fit almost spookily into Elvis's metaphysical belief system and his growing intrigue with mirror images. In fact, she was known at the time, just after her breakthrough in Bye Bye Birdie, as the female Elvis, a high-voltage symbol who could sing, dance, and act. She described herself and Elvis later as eerily similar. In fact, Anne Margaret and Elvis actually physically resembled each other, okay? Their faces and bone structures were strikingly alike, down to the crooked half-smile. Elvis was taken back by this duality. Anne was taken back by this duality. Later, writing in her autobiography, it was just like discovering a long-lost relative. Just as intriguingly, Anne bore a likeness to Priscilla. Well, Priscilla would have borne a likeness to Anne, since Anne was older. The Swedish star and part Norwegian 18-year-old both had pouty lips, pert noses, wide-set eyes, and heart-shaped faces. As Priscilla grew older, it often became difficult to distinguish her from Anne in certain photographs. I don't believe that. I do believe that she did try to look like her, though. They even sounded alike. Anne spoke in a breathy, sexy, cooey voice that Priscilla was either born with or affected to emulate the actress, whose kittenish growl was her trademark. To complete the bizarre cycle, when Elvis first met Anne Margaret, Deborah Paget would later recount, we had the same makeup person at the studio, and he used to tell me that my face and Anne Margaret's face, our bone structure, was exactly the same. Deborah also told of how in Las Vegas hotels in the 70s, her own parents once mistook her for Priscilla. The twinning theme seemed to dominate Elvis's love life. Deborah Paget's mother and Elvis's mother, Gladys Presley and Deborah and Priscilla, Priscilla and Elvis, Elvis and Anne Margaret and Priscilla, Deborah and Anne Margaret. These were sort of parallelisms Elvis found fascinating and could spend hours pondering. That's where we're going to stop. It's enough to talk about. Now, obviously, Priscilla would have either been born with that breathless, kind of baby talk voice, or she emulated Anne Margaret. Now we know Anne Margaret has stuff out there, movies, and she taught. It'd be very easy for Priscilla to imitate her. Need to put some pictures of Anne Margaret and Priscilla and Deborah Paget together. All beautiful women, and I know that those that don't like Priscilla on this channel sometimes disagree with me about that. You know, but I thought that she had a beauty to her, for sure. Anna Margaret, obviously. Deborah Paget, obviously. Who I wish Elvis would have somehow gotten involved with and married. Dolores Hart, the nun, Sister Dolores. Very beautiful spirit and soul. So anyways, TCB, TLC. Till next time, I appreciate you being here on the channel and for being patient with me. Stay tuned. We got more book reading coming up. Go visit my channel, Elvis and the Legends. It's just youtube.com/@, Elvis and the Legends. It's in my link and some of the descriptions on these videos as well if you want to click on that and find it. I'll be doing more reading over there. I'm reading the Anne Margaret biography right now. And I'll have Joe's Book Club up with other books as well. There's going to be a third channel. It's going to be mainly, probably no Elvis on there. But if you like reading about Ronald Reagan or about John Wayne or about any of those, Gary Cooper or any of those old actors or singers, I mean, Tom Jones, Princess Diana. I'll be reading books like that. Gary Matera, his other books. I'll be reading on there. I'll be doing podcasts with him and with other authors. So that's coming up too, okay? TCB, TLC. Till next time, I'm done now. Love y'all.